with. Acorn.
Right.
To determine the exact cause of this explosion.
More than 160 people were hurt in the explosion. The Boy Scouts of America may soon release a proposed resolution concerning a possible change to allow homosexuals as members and leaders. AFN's Charlie Butts reports on the campaign against it.
OnMyHonor.net is an organization of Scout leaders and others who want the Scouts to remain true to the Bible and reject the demand by activists to admit homosexuals. John Stemberger heads OnMyHonor.net and says a proposed resolution should be out soon.
And so we'll know by the 22nd what the language will be that's being proposed. It will be voted on by 1,400 delegate Scouts from around the country on May the 23rd.
He also tells AFN tens of thousands of people have already inquired on the OnMyHonor.net website expressing support.
You can send an email there to all of the Scout executives, the commissioners, and the presidents of each council that's going to be voting on this matter and tell them respectfully that we think this is a very dangerous move. I think it'll financially devastate the organization, socially it'll devastate them, and just on numbers alone.
Many churches host Scout troops, and Stemberger says if the organization admits homosexuals, they will gut the human capital in the program, and it will be an enormous mistake. The Scouts in Canada admitted homosexuals, atheists, and girls, and participation reduced 50% within 5 years. I'm Charlie Butts.
And the price of crude oil rose above $88 per barrel today in Asia. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Right now, it seems that America is adrift at sea, being pitched and tossed by unseen but powerful waves of opinion and self-gratification. She needs an engine and fuel to make her way back to the dock. The American Family Association has been bringing tens of thousands of voices together for more than 30 years and is one of the most effective pro-family organizations in the country. To find out more and climb aboard, log on to afa.net. afa.net.
Hello, testing. Okay, now let's think about this. She dumped it in the sink, and and they said, well, did you see what was in there? And she said, oh no, I just that's what I just dumped it in there. I didn't even want to look at it. So it's just one of those things. She said, I didn't want to see what was in there. I just kind of did what I had to do. I just dumped it and put it in the sink, and I thought that was really sad. And at the same time, I noticed in the courtroom they have a garbage disposal. So I'm thinking, sink, garbage disposal, and it's just like goes through your mind. The prosecutor thought it was necessary to bring in that garbage disposal, and I'm sure, it's just the whole thing is just, well, you're getting the picture. But anyway, it's just terribly sad. But that's what you're listening to in the courtroom. You're watching these people get up there and talk and about their role in this horrible, horrible situation and this horrible murder of beautiful children, God's children, and the death of this woman. And I'll go in a little bit more about that too, because we're going to be taking a break in a little while. But I just wanted to make sure that that this is something we have to talk about. We have to bring this to light. This happens in abortion clinics all over. They're not regulated. You have no idea what goes on in these places. And when you hear the reports, a lot of times a lot of people don't want to believe them, but it's there. So we're going to take a few minutes to take a break, and we're going to come right back and talk about this. And I also have a special guest I want you to meet. So take care, stay tuned, and come back.
My husband Jake and I have 3 young kids. Late last year, he was in an accident on the farm where he works and spent 2 weeks in the hospital. It was so sudden and so scary, the kind of thing that can shake your faith. But God gave us this amazing sense of his peace and presence. He spared Jake's life and answered our prayers for healing. Through it all, we've been so thankful to be members of Medishare. What an encouragement to have fellow believers sharing our medical bills. I love how whenever I call, my rep prays with me. Medishare truly is Christian care for body and soul.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your Medishare information guide, call 855-PSALM-23. Not available in Kentucky or Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23.
This is Don Stevens with a Mercy Minute. Michelle works in the eye clinic on our hospital ship, the Africa Mercy. Listen to her story of a patient's transformation.
Miriama's only 18 and already had cataracts. Several days after her surgery, doctors removed her eye patch. At first, she was quiet, but then broke out into an enormous smile. She clapped and announced to the room that she could see again. It was an amazing moment. Miriama looked at the doctor and said in French, "I will share what you have done. I will try to do a thing for someone sick as you have done for me."
You see, when we experience the gift of mercy, we are inspired to share it, and we discover true joy in blessing others. Now you go, begin a chain of mercy today. This is Don Stevens of mercyships.org, bringing hope and healing to the world's forgotten poor.
Americans have been handed the priceless gift of freedom, purchased by the sacrifice of our forefathers and blessed by God. This freedom was founded on biblical morality, declaring right and wrong. Today, morality is in the eye of the beholder. If there's no sin, why do we need a Savior? A moral society and the reception of the gospel go hand in hand. That's why we're here. The American Family Association. Learn more at afa.net.
Hello and welcome back. This is Day Gardner, and guess what? You're inside the Beltway with Star Parker, and I am sitting in for Star doing Pro-Life Fridays. We're everything pro-life on Friday, and of course, I started out the program doing telling you about some of the testimony that I heard in Philadelphia when I was there, and of course, I'm going to be going back on Monday, and I'll be going back and forth. Coming up this Monday, actually, we're going to hear the other side. Of course, we hear Gosnell's side of the story. But anyway, let's talk. I want to finish a little bit about what I was talking about before. Of course, we talked about Elizabeth Hamilton being on up on the stand and her testimony and how that came across. I mean, and of course, this is all from my point of view, from me sitting there watching and taking notes and trying to, for myself, put pieces together and see how in the world this doctor got away with so many horrible things for so long. Now, we should say that he's also a millionaire, you know, and he made his money off of his community, which is a predominantly black community. Now, here's another thing. Which is really interesting. Kermit Gosnell had a couple of waiting rooms. First of all, this place was really, really dirty. Everyone says, you know, that was dirty. Even the employees, you know, have come out and said that wasn't really the cleanest places. They did this and they did that. But they also admit that after the arrests were made, and of course after when they went in to investigate and to take a look, and they arrested Kermit Gosnell, then started a mass cleanup. I mean, they did painting, they were scrubbing, and the employees have said, you know, that then they were instructed to come up with the same story. They were actually called together in a meeting to talk about what their story would be. And so there's a lot of stuff going on here. But I think that it's just sitting in the courtroom and hearing it firsthand has really opened up my eyes an awful lot. And this coming Monday, as I was saying, we're going to be hearing Gosnell's side of the story, so that should be really interesting. My very dear friend, Dr. Alveda King, will be with me, so I'm going to really, it should be really interesting hearing the other side. And, of course, you're going to hear it because whatever I hear, I'm going to relate to you. But I did want to introduce to you a very good friend of mine who's sitting in today, and she's a guest. We're going to talk a little bit about Kermit Gosnell, and then just before the end of the program, we'll talk a little bit more about what she does. But her name is Ellen Staniszewski. She's a very good friend of mine. She's a pro-life journalist. She does sidewalk counseling. She's a prayer warrior, and she does all she can to help pregnant women choose life. And I just want to thank her for joining me today. Hello, Ellen.
Hello, Day. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this Kermit Gosnell case. We have said that until recently, and of course the media had to kind of be shamed into doing some coverage. It still doesn't get a lot of mainstream media, but the thing is that it has gotten bigger over the past few weeks. But until recently, we haven't heard very much. What is it that you've heard? I think that you're probably hearing from the same people I was hearing from, which are basically pro-life sources.
Well, I have been able to view the 3801 Lancaster video online, which is a wonderful YouTube that shows a lot of the graphic details. But I haven't heard as much from the mainstream media as I would have liked to have heard. In fact, I was just in Philly this past week, and it did not come up but only one time on the news when I watched the nightly news. It only came up one time on that news cycle, and they weren't really reporting it the way that I would think they would. And I have heard how it's a house of horrors and how horrible it was, how bloody and terrible, and the things that were found in that clinic were unbelievable, and the horrific details that have come out. And yet, I have heard that he is still pleading innocent.
Yeah. He is actually, he's saying that he's not guilty. This, of course, is Dr. Kermit Gosnell. For anyone who is just coming back with us, Dr. Kermit Gosnell is on trial for 8 counts of murder. 1 count is for the death of a woman who died during an abortion in his clinic. And then 7 counts are for babies who survived their abortion, were born alive, but then killed by Gosnell and his little team. They're severing the spinal cords of the babies with a pair of scissors. It's really interesting. There's one guy, this Steve Massoff, who they called Dr. Steve, which is really funny because he's not a doctor at all, but he was referred to as Dr. Steve. And he actually said that basically when you cut the spinal cord of a baby, it said basically it's a beheading because it's the only thing holding the head to the body. And, so it's really atrocious. There's another thing, and I want to say this, Ellen, before we go on. Just before the break, also, I mentioned the fact that he had a lot of waiting rooms, about the how grimy and dirty his offices were. Did you know that he had one waiting room, the waiting room downstairs, grimy as it was, with a lot of chairs? I would say there were maybe about, it looked like maybe about 15, 20 chairs in that waiting room. But anyway, that he had one for black women, and then there was a nicer, I have to say the whole thing was dirty, but it was a slightly cleaner, slightly nicer waiting room upstairs that were for white women. So here's a black man, a black doctor, who segregated his own office and had the black women in the dirtier, larger office, and then he would take the white women to the slightly cleaner office, which really just turned my stomach. I can't tell you what I feel. It's like anger. It's disgust. The fact that he's, it's like Jim Crow all over again. So it's just really, really upsetting. But you mentioned, Ellen, in while you were in Philadelphia, but in Philadelphia there are several newspapers that have been there. As a matter of fact, when I first went into the courtroom was empty. I would say it holds about 100 people or so. But it was empty except for 6 people. There were myself and another very good friend, Cheryl Sullinger, who is with Operation Rescue. And then there were 4 media personnel who were with Philadelphia newspapers. There were no national people there. It's really interesting that there was just nobody there, and so Philadelphia would hear this in the newspapers anyway. I don't know how much on television, maybe here and there, I don't know, but the newspapers were reporting it. Outside of Philadelphia, I mean, you live in Maryland, we're in the D.C. area, and we really didn't hear very much, which is one of the reasons why I went to Philadelphia to hear for myself.
Yeah, there's a total media blackout on this, and they just don't want to expose the horrific details because it exposes abortion for what it is. Yeah. Because in spite of the fact that this was filthy and dirty and unregulated, and babies were dying and women were dying, the abortion, commercial entities or people who are standing up for abortion and think abortion is good, they don't want this exposed because this truly is the underbelly of the abortion industry. And it's a terrible thing what's going on, and yet they want to cover it because if we were to look at any clinic, abortion clinic, in Maryland particularly, probably almost all of them are unregulated and dirty, and the same kind of things are going on across the country. This is not probably an isolated incident, but it's being uncovered and exposing the reality of what goes on in abortion clinics. This is where babies are literally killed.
Yeah.
And mothers who come to these clinics are often harmed and damaged. And we see in Maryland here, we had a young lady, Jennifer Morbelli, whose uterus was perforated and she bled out. And maybe it's not as dirty as some other clinic, but it's still very
and we don't really know that anyway.
We don't know, but it's abusive to women and it kills babies, and this is what abortion is. And I think they're covering it because they don't want to expose it to the general public just how horrific abortion is.
Yeah. And the thing is, now here's the thing. If a child is born alive, if a woman goes in for an abortion, a child is born alive, and which does happen quite often from what I understand, that's basically what he's saying, well, the baby was born alive, and, he believes that the child should be killed. Here's where it gets really, really touchy with Gosnell and why he's on trial for murder, is the fact that in Pennsylvania law, I believe it's 23 weeks. Anything over 24 weeks you can't touch. Okay, they say 24 weeks, but it's really 24 weeks and over are considered, it's murder. And that's basically what's happened. There was one baby who was delivered that Gosnell joked about and said the baby was so big that he could have walked, the baby could have walked to the bus stop with him. I mean, this was, he joked about this child before killing it. There's testimony there on stage by employees who said that, the one woman who said that, she heard the baby screeching, not screaming, screeching before it was killed. When you think about the fact that these are children who were killed so mercilessly, it just touches me. It's so sad, and it's just so grotesque and so heinous. What a horrible, horrible crime! What a horrible thing to do. But yet he's saying, you know what? I'm not guilty. Do you think he has a case? What do you think?
Well, I think he's guilty on so many numerous counts, not on just the death of the woman, but on the death of the babies, because these were truly living human beings, even if they were, 24 weeks or 30 weeks. Or I heard on Sunday his wife would go in with him and they would do really late-term abortions on Sunday afternoons. But I mean, these are babies.
Did you know that these workers, actually he did night work. I mean, he'd come in at 8:30 in the evening and abort babies until like 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, his late-term abortions were late-term abortions. I mean, he did these very late also. I mean, it's atrocious. But let's even go, you mentioned a few minutes ago about Jennifer Morbelli, who lost her life here in Maryland. She was killed by an abortionist here. Of course, there's Tanya Reeves. in Chicago, President Obama's backyard, who lost her life to abortion. She's a black mother. As a matter of fact, she was getting ready to get married, and she actually died. And we don't hear very much coverage about these women who lose their lives. The one that is coming up with, of course, Gosnell is Karnamaya Monger, who is the mother of 2 children. She was killed, and she was killed by overdose. She was overdosed. And it was really, when you think about, just the other day when I was there, her daughter was on the stand, and her daughter was talking about, and she needed an interpreter because she doesn't speak very good English. But her daughter talked about how they went in and how, difficult it was for them. They lived in a refugee camp in Nepal, I believe it is, for like 20 years. And they finally came here through an amnesty program into the United States, and they were given help for 3 months or whatever through the governmental or for the amnesty, I believe, helped them for 3 months. And after that, they're basically on their own. So they were working and everything. And this mother, who was 41 years old, she decided to get an abortion. They kind of bounced her around for a while. She ended up in Philadelphia. She lived in Virginia. She ended up in Philadelphia at Gosnell's clinic. And she went in. They gave her something that would actually start her dilation, and then she was supposed to come back the following day. I mean, driving this 5-hour or 6-hour, whatever is distance each day. And she went back, and of course, they gave her medication, and she was evidently overdosed. And the people who gave her they were not doctors who gave her the medication. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did. And I find it almost unimaginable in the United States today, in 2013, that they do not regulate these clinics, and yet they are doing anesthesia, they are doing surgery, they are doing things to women that require going inside the womb and pulling out babies and baby parts, etc., and yet there's no regulation.
They're not medical professionals at all.
Right, and they're not clean, they're not sterile. The women are exposed to HIV and AIDS and hepatitis and everything else that's going on that could be contracted because of lack of sterilization. And they found blood on the gurneys and blood all over the place. And here's all this unregulated surgery going on, and they call it so-called healthcare, and it's not.
Yeah, how about this? Did you hear that at Gosnell's clinic, a 15-year-old girl worked there, and she actually was involved in the procedure of killing babies. 15
and now
years
we have
old.
Child labor going on. They were using child labor.
No, wait
here.
a minute. Her mother worked there, so her mother allowed her daughter, her 15-year-old daughter, to be involved in this horrific business. And I think, you think about, what are people thinking? How could you want your daughter to come in and help kill babies?
And the souls of these people involved in this industry, the souls of the people that were in this little house of horrors in Philadelphia there. You think about the spiritual soul of these individuals involved in this, and how when they can kill and murder and murder these babies that are viable, that would be able to live outside the womb, who were alive, and they could just snip the spinal cords of these babies and watch them die and kill them. You wonder what kind of soul is left in that person who would be involved in that kind of killing.
You're absolutely right. And just for the record, the youngest child alive and today, actually her mother gave birth to her when the mother was 5.5 months pregnant. That little girl, Amelia Taylor, is 7 years old. We're going to take a break. We're coming back right after this. You're not going to want to miss it. Pro-Life Fridays with Faye Gardner, back inside the Beltway.
Many of us have carried the weight of our secrets for way too long. Guilt and unforgiveness settle into our hearts and minds, and the burden becomes unbearable. Hi, I'm Sherry Rigby of October Baby. Like you, I carried this burden for years with the guilt of having had an abortion. I know that pain all too well. You think you're beyond forgiveness, beyond healing, but there is hope. There is forgiveness, and it is for you right now. There is a movement across this nation to heal the brokenhearted from carrying the secret of abortion. Since sharing my secret during the filming of October Baby, I have been blessed to partner with Surrendering the Secret and helping many men and women discover freedom from the guilt and shame of abortion. Surrendering the Secret is an 8-part Bible study that will help you find the tools you need to lay your burden down and help you find the forgiveness and freedom you desperately yearn for. Today is the day. Go to surrenderingthesecret.com and click on Get Help Now. surrenderingthesecret.com.
Pro-life and feminism.
This is a special commentary from the Susan B. Anthony list, named for the suffragette who was proudly pro-life.
The Susan B. Anthony list's own Emily Buchanan has written a wonderful piece on feminism and the pro-life movement. She points out that in the early days of feminism, young women like Susan B. Anthony and Alice Paul argued for women's right to vote, but none advocated abortion. Paul, author of a 1923 Equal Rights Amendment, characterized abortion as, quote, the ultimate exploitation of women. It was the neo-feminists of the 1960s and 70s that said women had to prize abortion as the pathway to equality. Find that article by Emily Buchanan at ideas.time.com.
This is Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony list. To join us in our battle for life, visit our website at sba-list.org.
I am the maker of the heavens. I am the bright and morning star. I am the one who walked on water. I am the one who calmed the sea. I am the fount of living water, the risen Son of Man, the healer of the broken. I am your Savior and Redeemer, who bore the sin of man, the author and protector, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the Holy Lamb above all things, who always was and is to come. Do you believe? Unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins.
Who is this I am? Get to know him at knowhim.afr.net. knowhim.afr.net.
Hello and welcome back. You are inside the Beltway with Star Parker. This is Pro-Life Friday, and I am Day Gardner sitting in for Star. We have been talking, I've been speaking with a very good friend of mine, Ellen Staniszewski, who is a pro-life journalist and sidewalk counselor. And we've been talking about the Gosnell story. And of course, on January 19th, 2011, Kermit Gosnell was charged with 8 counts of murder for killing a mother and 7 babies who were born alive. And he did this by what he called snipping, cutting the back, putting scissors into the base of their neck, the skull, and cutting their spinal cords to kill the children after they were born alive. And these children were viable children because it was actually illegal. He was doing it after the legal limit for abortion. So he's in a heap of trouble. He's on trial for his life, actually, in Philadelphia, and the man pleads not guilty. But, we have been talking about this. There is one thing, Ellen, I did want to say, and then I do want to ask you a little bit about your work and about what you do and how you got involved in sidewalk counseling. But one more thing. There was the maintenance man, the handyman, who was on, this really brought tears to my eyes. I mean, it was really hard. It always says, my heart breaks for every child who is abused or missing or brutally killed. My heart breaks because they're so helpless. They're totally innocent, totally helpless, and I'm talking about children who are even older children who we see on the television all the time, abused children, missing children, no matter what their race. My heart breaks for all of them, and I think that we all are in the same place. But, you know, we heard this handyman describe, and this is the thing and then I'm going to move on to Ellen and talk a little bit about what she does. But I do want to, with regard to the Gosnell case, one more thing. You know, there's so many things, and you're going to hear it all from me because I'm going to put it all out there for you to know and hear. And I'm at the Gosnell trial throughout the week, so I hear everything that's going on firsthand, and no one's telling me. I can tell you firsthand what I'm hearing. But there was a handyman who was the other day the prosecution witness, and he testified how several times throughout the week the toilets would get backed up, would get stopped up, and it was his job, of course, to plunge the toilets. Now, he had to go outside to do the plunging, and the prosecutor asked him, he said, well, what was the blockage? And you know, he said, well, you know, he said, no, what was it, though? And he actually said, well, like baby body parts, arms. These are things that were in the septic system that were stuck and they were blocking. There were baby body parts in the toilet. He also went inside the bathroom, took the bolts off of the toilet and took the toilet up and laid it on his side. And there was a whole lot of stuff stuffed in the, you know. I mean, when you think about the fact that, is this what America's come to? I'm a very patriotic person. I love this country. But is this what we've come to? Flushing our children down the toilet, flushing baby body parts down the toilet. I mean, is this what we do to human beings? This is America. Ellen, you are a sidewalk counselor. Now, yes. You know, I think a lot of people, we hear, you know, talk about sidewalk counselors, and there's so many. You know, you hear a lot of people like to say, oh, there's holy rollers who are out there, you know, on the side. They're praying and they're doing rosaries and all different kinds of things. But let's talk about how you got involved in sidewalk counseling and what sidewalk counseling really is.
Well, I started helping out at a crisis pregnancy center before moving to Maryland. I had done that for several years. So I knew the importance of trying to reach out to these young ladies when they're in a crisis pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And when we moved to Maryland, I found that a friend of mine talked about 40 Days for Life and talked about other things, and I was made aware of a clinic on Greenbelt Road near the University of Maryland where abortions were taking place. So I felt the need to inquire as to what was going on in that clinic and who was praying and who was involved in helping these women.
What was going on in that clinic? Do you have
a lot of pregnancies have been terminated there, over 35,000 to date, according to the abortionist, who sometimes even talks to us.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. There are people who always say, well, late-term abortions are not allowed. But we know that they exist, and we know that they happen. And it's from what I understand, that if a baby is killed inside the womb, somehow that makes it legal. Is that how it works?
In Maryland, that is the law, that abortion is pretty much not only unregulated, but there are very few rules attached to it. Mm-hmm. So that right up to 9 months, a baby in Maryland can be aborted. Right up to the very last minute when the baby could be delivered, it could instead be killed in the womb and taken out part by part and removed. And so this is literally a killing field. What happens in abortion is just unbelievable.
So what does a sidewalk counselor do?
Well, what we are doing in Greenbelt, Maryland, is that we are offering an alternative to these women as they walk in to the abortion clinic. We are on the sidewalk. We have signs that say, pregnant, need help. We have free housing. We have free medical. We have free ultrasounds. We have places for these young women to go to have their baby and have all the help that they need, the support system that they need, including housing and all the cribs and diapers, whatever it is that they need. Mm-hmm. We have all this available to them, and we want to make them aware that there's an alternative to having this abortion. Mm-hmm. And we even offer adoption help or whatever help that they need. We try to be everything that they need, we try to have available for them. We have literature to give them, and sometimes we give them baby booties. We try to get them to connect with us And so we pray, and when the women walk in, we yell out that we have help for you. We have something to give you. We just want to talk to them and love them and offer them the kind of help
that means an awful lot, especially when you think about the fact that one of the main things you hear is, well, okay, so you're here now, well, what happens after the baby's born? And a lot of these women don't realize that, that the help does not go away, that we are there.
And we even help them a year after their baby's born. Right now we're working with a mother who's had her baby. It's 2 years now since the baby's been born, and we're still working with her.
What is a save like to you? We talk about saving a child. What talk about one that just really meant a lot to you?
Well, we had 9 saves during Lent at Greenbelt, just that we are aware of. We don't know about all the turnarounds because many of them turn around. One of the women, she was quite far along, and when she came to talk to us, she was, I think, 6 months, she thought. She was 6 months. And she came to talk to us and said, after she talked to us, she hugged me and we prayed, and she is going to keep her baby. And we have followed up, and she went to get her ultrasound, and she is keeping her baby.
Wow.
And it makes your heart feel good to know that this mother won't have to suffer the pains of abortion, and her baby will actually have a chance to see the sunshine and feel the raindrops. Mm-hmm. And I get excited about every single baby that's saved, because we don't save them all. That's possible to do, but the few that we do, we know that they go into the community telling other women that are pregnant that these babies can have a life. These babies are wanted. There are approximately 1 million women, 1 million families waiting to adopt in the United States today. That's the estimate of 1 million families who have put in their information to try and adopt a baby, and we abort 1.3 million babies. Now, if we could just pair up the mothers who are pregnant with these families who want to adopt their babies, we could pretty much eliminate the problems that infertility brings, where they can't have a baby, and we can also solve the problem of so many abortions, because we could connect these babies who are in the womb with families that want them. If the mother cannot give their baby the care or is not prepared to parent.
And that's something to think about, especially when women are considering a late-term abortion, is the fact that, hey, you're almost there, have your baby, and then make some other couple who cannot have children or for some reason cannot conceive, give them a gift to say that, I'm almost there, I have a couple more months, and then I'm going to make a gift of this child to some loving parent who really would love to raise their child.
And I just testified to the Maryland Senate on SB 802, which did not get passed this session, but I believe we will make it next session. And this is about open adoption and adoption information and being able to provide for these women adoption information that they need. Yeah. And it's a wonderful thought to just think about that. Maybe if you can't parent, maybe someone else would not only love to parent your baby, but you could visit your baby 4 or 5 times a year. You set it up in the paperwork and documentation that you do for the adoption, how many times you want to be able to visit your baby and to see them at their birthday party or milestones like kindergarten graduation, to actually have a little interaction with your baby so that someone else raises it. You don't have to worry about any of the problems or things that you need to provide for your baby because it's already taken care of. Right. And yet you can still be the biological parent that has some interaction with your child. So you have the best of both worlds here. You're still, the baby gets to live, so you don't have to suffer the pains of abortion, and your baby gets a chance to have life. And we also offer free counseling post-abortion, which is really important because mothers do suffer from having an abortion. A 60-year-old woman from Germany who's teaching at the University of Maryland stopped by and said that even after 40 years, she still suffers from the fact that she had an abortion in her 20s.
Wow.
And she said she has not been able to overcome the pain of having killed her own baby. And she needed counseling, so we set her up with some free counseling through several of the programs that we have.
So let me ask you this, for anyone who's out there, anyone who's listening, who finds that they are pregnant, they need help, they need you have any place where they can call, a number they can reach, a website they can go to?
Well, we have 1-800-ANGEL-OK, which is a Gabriel Network site that works across the country. 1-800-ANGEL-OK, which will help set them up with a place to go for either ultrasounds, or if they want housing, or if they need immediate attention, if they need us to pick them up from a abusive situation, we will actually go find them on a street corner, homeless pregnant women, and take them in and give them help immediately. And so women have options, and we need to offer that alternative, which is what we do on the sidewalk. We're saying there are alternatives. You can choose life. You can choose something better, and you can have a better life because of your decision, because it's never easy to look back and have regrets about an abortion. That's not easy, but to look forward and say, I gave my baby the opportunity to live. I gave my baby that chance at life that I myself have.
And that's what we hope that all mothers will realize and do realize. And we should also say that there's always forgiveness, even with this horrible, horrible sin of killing your child. This is not the unforgivable sin, that God loves you, and he wants to welcome you into his arms right now, immediately. So just know that you are loved in spite of what you do. I mean, we all are sinners after all, and we know that there is forgiveness in his son, Jesus Christ. So we should remember that there is forgiveness. This is not the unforgivable sin, and God loves you and wants you to come to him, come home. Also, I'd just like to say once again, my guest today has been Ellen Staniszewski. She's a pro-life warrior, a sidewalk counselor, and you heard her tell firsthand about her experiences with sidewalk counseling. And Ellen, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and hang out with you, and I really appreciate that you came on today.
You are very welcome, and this is a wonderful radio network that people should get to know about. I think what Star Parker is doing is excellent. What you are doing, Day, is wonderful, and I commend you for being able to your presence there has made a huge difference, and the fact that the jury knows that you care.
God is good, though. You know, he kind of puts you wherever he wants you to be. And maybe
America the Beautiful. We're trying to keep it that way. That's the Voices of Liberty Choir from Spirit of Life Ministries.
Also,
and
I just
I'm
wanted
Star
to say
Parker.
that
Inside
when
the
you
Beltway
think
with
about
Star Parker here on
abortion,
Urban
especially
Family Talk.
in
Glad
light
to be with
of
you
the
again
Kermit
today.
Gosnell trial.
My goodness, just
for
listening
anyone
to the
who's,
news, we know there are a lot of issues that we have to keep in prayer, but also in action. We have
please,
to be
go online
in our great
to
society,
the
in our
news
great
media,
country, and that's why we're bringing you inside the Beltway, right here in Washington, D.C., where our lives touch, where public policy is made. And
I want you to think
be
about this.
Engaged as Christian people,
a baby,
because if we are not
being born,
what do
being
we do?
Delivered into warm
the
hands,
Scripture's clear. If the foundations
breathing
are
air,
destroyed,
perhaps for the
what
very
will the
first
righteous
time,
do? And there are some places I think we should just totally pull out,
and
of course, in
for the
schools,
very
getting our
time.
children out of these government cesspools we call schools. I think
the
that there are a lot of entitlement programs that we need to revisit and see if we should all force ourselves into a one-size-fits-all hostile to Christianity environment.
Really need to hear
we'll be talking
more
about all these things here on
really
Inside the Beltway, but today I want to continue a discussion we started yesterday,
these beautiful children,
just to give you a general view of how we are in this cultural collapse. What has happened? We are in a nation of moral free fall, and how did that
especially
happen?
America,
so that we can move ourselves to
these beautiful
get
children
past that
and
moment.
Of course, we'll be back to talk about some other things. I mean, there's a few other things that kind of bother me about this case, but we don't have time right now, so I'm going to have to do it next week. I can have to tune in next week for the Pro-Life Friday. I'd like to talk about the racial aspect of this. You've been listening to Inside the Beltway with Star Parker, and I want to thank you for joining. And I want to thank you for joining. And I want to thank you for